Welcome, deep divers, to a journey into the very architecture of the human soul. Today, we're confronting the profound depths of the human mind, venturing into a period where one of psychology's greatest figures, well, by his own admission, stood on the brink of madness.
Yeah, it's an intense starting point.
It really is. And it was from this intense personal upheaval that Carl Gustav Jung, this towering figure of 20th century psychology, birthed revolutionary ideas that continue to shape our understanding of ourselves and, honestly, the world around us.
Indeed. Born the son of a pastor, Jung's early life was deeply marked by unusual, even you could say mystical experiences. His intellectual journey, as we'll discover, it diverged dramatically from his contemporaries, most notably from his mentor, Sigmund Freud.
Right.
He sought to integrate the spiritual and the scientific, a path that was both incredibly fruitful and, at times, incredibly isolating for him.
And our mission in this deep dive is to explore exactly that. Jung's incredible life, the intellectual and personal upheavals that forged his unique vision, the profound secrets he kept hidden for decades, and, the enduring influence of his ideas on modern thought. We're pulling from essential sources like his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, and the groundbreaking Redbook to go beyond just the historical facts.
Yeah, we want to get to the why.
Exactly. We want to grasp the why and how behind his genius, his struggles, and ultimately his lasting legacy.
In understanding Jung isn't just about historical psychology. It's really a shortcut to understanding yourself and, well, the collective human experience. You'll find these aha moments, things that will reframe how you see the world and your place in it, offering concise, impactful knowledge without feeling like you're drowning in dense information.
Right. Will be your guides through the intricate landscape of his mind. So let's unpack this foundational rift because it truly sets the stage for everything that came after for you.
It really does.
In the beginning, it was such a promising alliance, wasn't it? A young, brilliant mind meeting the established master.
It was, truly. Their collaboration began, 1906, after Jung sent Freud his groundbreaking work on word associations, a project that really put Jung on the map.
Right.
Freud saw immense potential in Jung almost immediately. Their relationship blossomed into this intense, almost father-son dynamic.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
And Freud, being the elder statesman of psychoanalysis, genuinely viewed Jung as his crown prince, his intellectual successor, the one who would carry the torch of his movement into the future.
Wow. Heavy expectations.
Very powerful, yeah. A symbiotic relationship at first.
And for a while, it was incredibly productive, but then the intellectual fault lines started to appear. It sounds like their initial alliance was almost destined for a clash, particularly over Freud's libido theory.
Yes.
How did Jung's understanding of this fundamental drive begin to diverge so dramatically from Freud's?
Well, that was the primary intellectual divergence, you're right. Freud's libido theory was, for him, the non-negotiable cornerstone of psychoanalysis.
Absolute bedrock.
Exactly. Positing sexuality as the sole central driving force of human behavior. He was quite rigid on this point. Yet Jung, as he detailed in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, found Freud's approach too one-sided, just too narrow.
Okay.
Jung began to conceptualize libido much more broadly. Not just as sexual energy, but as a general psychic energy, a fundamental life form.
Or like vitality.
Precisely. This wider view encompassed spiritual, creative, and life-affirming dimensions, far beyond mere biological drives. He saw psychic energy as this dynamic, adaptable force manifesting in various forms, including, but definitely not limited to, sexuality.
And that immediately created tension.
Oh, absolutely, because it challenged Freud's foundational premise head-on.
It's fascinating how a differing interpretation of one core concept could cause such a massive schism. But it wasn't just libido, was it? Jung's burgeoning theories about the collective unconscious and archetypes also put him on a collision course with Freud.
Indeed. Jung's work on the collective unconscious was a truly radical departure. I mean, think about it. Freud focused primarily on the individual unconscious, right? Shaped by personal history, repressed memories, early childhood experiences.
The personal stuff.
The personal stuff, exactly. Jung, however, began to postulate this deeper transpersonal layer of the unconscious, shared by all humanity, a reservoir of ancestral experiences and universal patterns.
The archetypes.
The archetypes, yes. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung expressed that Freud's rejection of these spiritual and methodological dimensions of the unconscious was incredibly limiting, like closing off vast continents of the human psyche.
Wow, what a metaphor.
He believed Freud's framework simply couldn't account for the rich tapestry of symbols, myths, and religious experiences common across cultures, which he observed constantly in his clinical work and his personal studies.
So, beyond just libido, did their fundamental differences also extend to something as profound as religion and spirituality? It seems Jung had this deep, lifelong interest in mystical themes, which was such a stark contrast to Freud's more, shall we say, secular perspective.
Absolutely. A huge contrast. Freud famously viewed religion as an illusion, a collective neurosis.
Right, the opiate of the masses kind of idea, almost.
Something like that. A projection of infantile helplessness onto a paternalistic God figure. He really saw it as something humanity needed to outgrow.
Oh.
Jung, though, coming from a pastor's family and having these profound personal mystical experiences himself.
Yeah, we touched on those.
He had a deep, genuine interest in religious and mystical phenomena. He saw these not as illusions to be dismissed, but as vital expressions of the human psyche, filled with symbolic meaning and psychological truth.
So, potentially useful, even necessary.
Very much so. He found Freud's dogmatic stance on religion intellectually restrictive, basically dismissing a fundamental aspect of human experience that Jung believed held immense psychological and transformative significance for the individual. It was a core difference in worldview.
So we have these massive intellectual differences brewing. Libido, the nature of the unconscious, religion. But it sounds like these weren't just academic debates kept in journals. They quickly became deeply personal, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
How did that father-son dynamic actually break down?
Well, that personal dynamic was crucial, perhaps even more critical than the intellectual clashes for the ultimate rupture. Freud, having poured so much into Jung, genuinely desired a loyal successor.
Right. Understandable, in a way.
Sure, someone who would carry on his legacy without deviation. He maybe saw a bit of himself in Jung and projected those expectations onto him.
But Jung wasn't having it.
No. Jung, a fiercely independent thinker, chafed under what he perceived as authoritarian expectations. He felt Freud demanded unquestioning acceptance of his theories, as he put it, rather than a free exchange of ideas between equals.
Like a disciple, not a colleague.
Exactly. This intellectual and personal tension was this slow burn, gradually eroding their mutual respect and trust over several years.
And it all culminated in a very public and painful rupture between 1911 and 1913. How did that final separation unfold?
The breaking point really came with the publication of Jung's Wandlungen und Symbol der Libido, Symbols of Transformation in 1912.
Okay.
This work openly articulated his divergent views on libido and the unconscious. It made it crystal clear he was forging his own path.
No turning back then.
Pretty much. This drew sharp criticism from Freud, and their correspondence, which is well documented in the Freud-Jung Briefwechsel, their collected letters, shows this rapid escalation of tensions.
You can actually read the breakdown.
You really can. It wasn't just an academic debate. It became a deeply emotional exchange fueled by a sense of betrayal on both sides, I think. The relationship definitively broke in 1913. It followed a really strained exchange of letters and the end of Jung's presidency in the International Psychoanalytic Association.
So a formal break, too.
Formal and personal. Jung himself described the separation as a painful loss, stating that Freud was not only a mentor, but a significant personal figure in his life. Losing that connection was, for him, akin to losing a spiritual father figure. It deeply impacted Jung on an emotional level.
Wow. What's fascinating here is that this wasn't just an academic debate to be filed away in textbooks. This was a deeply personal, emotionally charged schism that really forced Jung to forge his own highly individual path.
Completely.
Understanding these early differences is absolutely crucial for grasping the originality and the sheer depth of Jung's later work. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was like a psychological earthquake that reshaped his entire professional and personal trajectory.
Couldn't have put it better myself. It set the stage for everything that followed.
And that psychological earthquake plunged Jung into one of the most intense, harrowing periods of his life. It's often referred to as his creative illness.
Yes.
This wasn't just a bad patch. This was a profound, almost voluntary descent into the unknown.
It truly was a profound descent. After the definitive break with Freud in 1913, Jung entered this severe psychological crisis that lasted for several years, roughly until 1918, maybe a bit longer in some ways.
Right.
This period is extensively documented in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, and even more intensely in the Red Book.
The famous Red Book.
The disorientation he felt was palpable. Jung wrote, and this is a direct quote, "After the break with Freud, I stood before nothing and I didn't know where I belonged."
Just completely adrift.
Utterly. He wasn't just losing a mentor, he was losing an entire intellectual home and questioning his very identity as a scientist. He felt like he was standing before a dark abyss, as if losing the ground beneath my feet.
He used that phrase, on the brink of madness. That's such an evocative and frankly terrifying description. What did that actually feel like for him to be standing there?
Jung described himself as being am rande de waanzins, which literally translates to on the brink of madness. Now, this wasn't necessarily a clinical psychosis in his own view.
Okay, important distinction.
Very, but rather a state where he was utterly overwhelmed by a flood of unconscious content. The Red Book chronicles his intense engagement with this unconscious material marked by overwhelming visions, powerful dreams, and these inner dialogues with figures from his psyche.
Wow.
He felt utterly compelled to confront these experiences, even fearing they might swallow me. It was a conscious decision, though, to dive into that abyss, a journey he felt was absolutely necessary for his own development.
And what's remarkable is that even while experiencing these overwhelming phenomena, Jung, as a seasoned psychiatrist himself, was acutely aware of what was happening to him. He was, in a sense, self-diagnosing as he went along.
Yes, that's what makes his journey so unique and, in hindsight, kind of heroic. He recognized the parallels between his visions and psychotic states, particularly schizophrenia, which he had studied extensively in his clinical practice at the Berkeley Clinic.
Right.
But he consciously distinguished himself by his ability to work with these contents, rather than being passively engulfed by them. He noted, "I knew I was walking a fine line, but I felt I had to go this way."
So he maintained some control.
He maintained an active, albeit fragile, ego function throughout this period. He was constantly striving to understand and integrate what he was experiencing rather than allowing himself to be consumed by it. It was an active confrontation.
So what were the visible and internal symptoms of this creative illness? How did it manifest in his day-to-day life? Must have been incredibly difficult.
Oh, profoundly difficult. On an emotional level, Jung described deep depressive moods, an inner emptiness, and a feeling of darkness that persisted for years. Yeah. He also experienced phases of intense anxiety and inner restlessness, particularly concerning the profound and often disturbing meaning of his visions. Cognitively, he was just inundated by this flood of uncontrollable archetypal images, visions, dreams.
Like a psychic storm.
Exactly. He felt these images like a storm tide crashing over him, leading to moments where the boundary between external reality and his internal imagination blurred. He questioned if he was slipping into another world.
Terrifying.
And physically, this intense inner work took a massive toll. It resulted in physical exhaustion and tension states directly linked to the intensity of his inner images. It was an all-encompassing, deeply disorienting experience that demanded everything from him.
And out of this crucible, this intense fire, came the Red Book, or Liber Novus, a masterpiece forged in crisis, but one that remained hidden for decades.
How did this extraordinary document come to be?
Well, the Red Book, which was finally published in 2009, long after his death.
Yeah, quite recently in the grand scheme. It is. It's an extraordinary, calligraphically crafted manuscript documenting this confrontation with the unconscious from about 1913 to 1930. It's filled with texts, visions, dialogues with these archetypal figures, and intricate, often quite unsettling illustrations painted by Jung himself.
He painted them too.
Oh, yes. The illustrations are integral. And this crisis, in fact, was the crucible where Jung developed active imagination, the technique we mentioned.
Right.
This conscious interaction with inner images to integrate them. He describes this in Memories, Dreams, Reflections as his key to mastering the crisis, the thing that prevented him from being completely swallowed by the unconscious. It was his method, his tool for grappling with this overwhelming psychic material.
What about its unique structure and content? It sounds like no ordinary book.
It's anything but ordinary. It's nonlinear. It feels prophetic. It blends narrative, poetic passages, dialogues, and visual elements in this archaic style, almost reminiscent of ancient religious texts or illuminated manuscripts. It's truly a journey documented.
So how is it structured?
It starts with Liber Primus, the way of what is to come. This details the beginning of his inner journey, his questioning of his existing beliefs. Here, he encounters figures like the spirit of the depths, who urges him to abandon purely rational beliefs and embrace the unconscious, essentially challenging his scientific identity to its core.
A direct. Yeah,
absolutely. He also has a key vision involving two figures, Elias, representing wisdom, and Salome, symbolizing his anima, his unconscious female aspect, described as blind and sensual. This encounter challenged him to integrate his inner duality, his conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine aspects. These encounters directly laid the groundwork for his groundbreaking concepts of the animum animus and the collective unconscious.
And then as he delved deeper, what did Liber Secundus reveal?
Liber Secundus, The Adventures of the Soul, is the most extensive part. It features further encounters with unconscious figures. Most notably, Philemon, this wise old man figure, became a pivotal spiritual guide for Jung.
Philemon.
Yes. He symbolized the superior wisdom of the unconscious. This figure really solidified the archetype of the wise old man in Jung's developing theories. He also encounters the red, representing destructive energy, maybe even the devil, and a black snake, symbolizing death and transformation. This section deeply explores themes of death, rebirth, and the challenging process of integrating the shadow, those repressed, often darker aspects of one's personality that we tend to deny in ourselves.
Shadow work.
Exactly. And his elaborate paintings, especially the mandalas, are integral to the work. Jung found that drawing mandalas helped him regain psychic balance. He saw them as symbols of psychic wholeness and integration.
It's truly a monumental, deeply personal work. So what made him keep it hidden for so long? Why did he forbid its publication during his lifetime, only for it to be released decades after his death? Seems counterintuitive for such important work.
His reasons were multi-layered and, well, very pragmatic for his time. Primarily, he feared for his scientific reputation. Jung explicitly stated, "I knew that I had to be taken seriously as a scientist, and this work was too personal, too raw." He worried intensely about being labeled mad or, just esoteric by a scientific community that was largely rationalistic and deeply skeptical of anything mystical or subjective.
The style itself could have been a problem.
Exactly. The raw, prophetic style and the candid descriptions of psychological instability could easily have led to ridicule and, frankly, professional ruin.
And it was incredibly intimate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something so deeply personal he maybe just couldn't share publicly.
Profoundly so. He referred to it as a journey into the depths of my soul, revealing his deepest struggles, his anxieties, his spiritual quest. He felt it was simply too private for public consumption during his life.
Makes sense.
There was also a significant fear of misinterpretation. Jung worried that readers would take the rich symbolic content literally rather than psychologically, missing the profound insights into the human psyche that he intended.
Like people thinking Philemon was a real person he met.
Precisely. He also considered it preliminary work, the raw material for his later, more formally scientific theories, rather than a finished academic treatise. He saw it as the foundation, the mine from which he drew his more structured ideas later on.
What about those specific passages that might have been particularly embarrassing or too intimate for his time? Could we pinpoint any?
Well, there are several areas. The raw descriptions of his psychological instability and his fear of losing his mind are just laid bare. Very vulnerable.
Wow.
Then there are his intense encounters with the anima figure, Salome, which definitely hint at his own intersexual conflicts and moral ambiguities within his personal psychological world. Very revealing stuff. His confrontation with the destructive aspects of his shadow, personified by the red, revealed his darker, repressed urges and perhaps personal failings he wasn't ready to publicize.
Okay.
And finally, his radical theological reflections, questioning traditional views of God, exploring the nature of good and evil outside conventional dogma. That would have been profoundly scandalous in the conservative society of his time.
Absolutely.
All these elements combined made it something he felt compelled to hide, to protect his professional standing and the delicate nature of his personal revelations.
So the Red Book isn't just a book. It's really a testament to a profound inner journey that reshaped one of psychology's greatest minds. It truly serves as a blueprint for understanding the complex interplay between crisis and creativity.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think that something so pivotal remained hidden for so long, and how much it clearly influenced the theories we still discuss today, even if indirectly, for many years.
It cast a long shadow, even while it was locked away.
So Jung emerged from this profound personal crisis, having charted the depths of his own unconscious. This is where it gets truly transformative, because he didn't just theorize about his experiences, he turned them into a therapeutic tool for others.
That's right. That's the crucial next step. His intensely personal experience with active imagination during his creative illness became a central technique in his therapeutic practice.
The very tool he used on himself.
The very tool. He describes it in Memories, Dreams, Reflections as a conscious interaction with dreams, visions, or inner images. Essentially, a way to dialogue with the unconscious and integrate its contents into conscious awareness. It was a method born of necessity for his own survival, but then refined into a powerful tool for healing and self-discovery in others.
But he wasn't reckless with it, was he?
Yeah.
He seemed to have a very careful risk assessment for his patients when it came to plumbing these sometimes dangerous depths of the unconscious.
Absolutely cautious. Jung was acutely aware that, as he put it, not every patient possessed the psychic constitution or reflective capacity for intense unconscious exploration.
Right, not everyone is Jung.
Exactly. He explicitly stated it would be irresponsible to push someone without preparation or stability. He candidly compared the intensity of his own visions to schizophrenic experiences, acknowledging that for less stable individuals, uncontrolled exploration could lead to fragmentation. Yeah, a kind of scattering or disintegration of the personality, or it could lead to inflation. Inflation is an over-identification with powerful archetypal content, leading to grandiosity or delusion, thinking you are the hero or the savior, rather than just connecting with the archetype.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
He even recognized that intense spiritual practices, like attempts at communication with the dead or deep engagement with esoteric themes, could trigger psychotic symptoms in vulnerable individuals if those powerful contents weren't consciously integrated and grounded in a strong ego.
So real dangers involved.
Real dangers. He wasn't suggesting everyone embark on a redbook-style journey without proper guidance and, crucially, psychological stability.
So for his patients, what were his recommendations then? How did he guide them through this potentially volatile inner landscape safely?
He emphasized a cautious, structured approach. Active imagination, if used at all, was always practiced under his careful guidance within a safe therapeutic container. The relationship was key.
The container, yeah.
The goal was always to facilitate the individuation process, Jung's term for self-realization, becoming whole. And crucially, to strengthen the ego before delving into deeper unconscious layers. It was all about a safe and transformative integration of inner experiences, not destabilization. He wanted to help people find wholeness, to become their complete selves, not shatter their sense of identity.
This careful yet radical approach really made a difference for some incredibly notable individuals. Hermann Hesse, the famous German writer, for example, his work is full of this stuff.
Absolutely. Hesse was in a severe psychological and existential crisis between 1916 and 1918. A really difficult time for him. He initially sought help from Jung's student, Dr. Joseph Bernhard Lang, who introduced him to Jungian concepts.
Ah, through a student first.
Yes, and Hesse also had personal meetings with Jung himself later on. And Jung's ideas, the collective unconscious, archetypes, individuation, profoundly influenced Hesse's literary masterpieces like Demian, Siddhartha, and Das Glasperlenspiel, the glass bead game.
You can totally see it in those books.
Clearly. Hesse later wrote in a letter to Jung that analytical psychology helped him to find his way out of the hell of despair, demonstrating how these concepts provided a framework for him to channel his inner conflicts creatively and find meaning in his turmoil.
Wow.
For an artist like Hesse, Jung's ideas offered more than just therapy. They provided a framework for transforming personal anguish into profound art. It gave shape to his suffering.
It wasn't just artists who found profound insight in Jung's work. His impact extended even to the seemingly opposite world of quantum physics, famously influencing Nobel laureate Wolfgang Pauli, didn't it?
It absolutely did. A fascinating connection. Wolfgang Pauli, a brilliant but deeply troubled physicist.
One of the pioneers of quantum mechanics.
Exactly. He suffered from depression, alcoholism, and a profound existential crisis in the 1930s. Jung provided direct analytical support, initially through his assistant, Werner Rosenbaum, and then personally.
So Jung analyzed Pauli's dreams.
Intensively. Jung analyzed over 1,000 of Pauli's dreams, interpreting recurring archetypal symbols like mandalas, circles, squares, as indicative of his individuation process, and a profound search for wholeness, for integrating the rational and irrational.
Over 1,000 dreams.
Yes. Pauli was also encouraged to engage creatively with his inner images through active imagination, much like Jung had done during his own crisis, painting, drawing his visions.
And this wasn't just therapy. This relationship seems to have transcended the typical patient-therapist dynamic. How did it evolve into an intellectual partnership?
That's the extraordinary part. Their therapeutic relationship blossomed into this profound intellectual collaboration. They started exploring connections between quantum physics, Pauli's world, and depth psychology, Jung's world.
Mind and matter.
Exactly. This culminated in their co-publication, Nature, Claring, and Psyche, the interpretation of nature and the psyche, in 1952, which famously explored the concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences.
Synchronicity, yeah. Still a popular idea.
It really demonstrates how Jung's insights could bridge the scientific and the psychological, even for a mind as rigorously logical as Pauli's. It suggested a deeper, interconnected reality that resonated, perhaps surprisingly, with the emerging, often counterintuitive theories of quantum mechanics. It showed that his more mystical ideas could have practical, real-world implications, even finding resonance in the hardest sciences.
So what's the practical implication of this for someone listening today? Jung didn't just theorize in an ivory tower. He applied his radical insights to help real people, from artists like Hess to scientists like Pauli, navigate the treacherous waters of the unconscious.
Precisely.
This really highlights the practical, transformative application of his deep, often mystical-sounding ideas for living a more integrated and meaningful life, whoever you are.
It shows a breadth and depth of his applicability.
Jung's intellectual journey was undeniably dramatic, but his personal life was also rich with complexity and, at times, controversy. Let's start with his family life. He was married for a very long time, wasn't he, to Emma?
Yes, Carl Gustav Jung was married to Emma Reichenbach from February 14, 1903, until her death on November 27, 1955. That's over 52 years of marriage.
Wow.
And Emma was an intelligent, educated woman in her own right. She actually became an analyst herself, specializing in the Grail legend.
Oh, interesting.
She was a deeply supportive partner in Jung's life and work, enduring considerable marital challenges, particularly, as you mentioned, his extramarital relationships. Jung described her as a stabilizing factor during his profound personal crisis, which is a huge testament to her strength and dedication.
A real anchor for him. And they had quite a large family.
They did. Carl and Emma had 5 children: Agath, Gret, Franz, Marianne, and Helene. They created this bustling family home in Küsnacht near Zurich that was an important anchor for Jung throughout his very turbulent inner life.
Now let's address the controversies head on, because his personal life wasn't without its complexities, especially regarding extramarital relationships. Toni Wolff is a name that often comes up.
Yes, Toni Wolff. She was born in 1888, started as Jung's patient around 1911 when she was quite young and deeply troubled.
Okay, started as a patient.
Yes, and later became a close colleague, collaborator, and indeed his mistress for many years. This relationship was widely known within their inner circle, and though reportedly very distressing for Emma Jung,
I can imagine.
it was, in a way, tolerated. Wolff played a significant role in Jung's intellectual and personal development. Some say she represented a different aspect of the feminine for him than Emma did. She even contributed to his work, including, some say, influencing parts of the Red Book.
But ethically tricky, especially starting as a patient.
Absolutely. This is the most documented instance of a sexual relationship with a former patient, which, by modern ethical standards, is clearly problematic. Very different times, different boundaries.
And there's also the name Sabine Spielrein. What was her relationship with Jung like?
Another complex one. Very complex. There are strong indications of a powerful, emotional, possibly romantic connection between Jung and Sabine Spielrein. She was another former patient, one of his earliest successes, actually, at the Burgoldslee.
Right.
She later became a prominent psychoanalyst in her own right, pioneering ideas about the death drive even before Freud. Freud himself criticized Jung for blurring professional boundaries in this instance, highlighting the early struggles in establishing clear ethical guidelines in the nascent field of psychoanalysis.
So Freud called him out on it.
He did in their correspondence. However, unlike the clearly documented long-term relationship with Toni Wolff, there is no conclusive evidence of a sexual affair between Jung and Spielrein. It seems to have been more of an intense intellectual and emotional entanglement.
Okay. And beyond these two, were there other confirmed relationships or even children from outside his marriage? You hear rumors sometimes.
No. Beyond Toni Wolff, there are no confirmed records or credible evidence of other extramarital relationships or children with any other women. While speculations sometimes arise, maybe from the symbolic and intimate content of the Red Book, particularly the raw nature of his psychological explorations with feminine figures.
Oh, right, the anima encounters.
Exactly. These remain unsubstantiated as literal autobiographical details of affairs or secret children. The book is much more about inner symbolic experiences than a literal diary of external events or relationships.
Okay, that's good clarification.
He employed techniques like word association tests, dream analysis, active imagination.
His core tools. His theoretical framework focused on libido as a broader psychic energy, encompassing spiritual and creative aspects, and his emphasis was always on individuation and symbolic interpretation. This placed him firmly within depth psychology, far removed from those physical, symptom-oriented treatments of that earlier era. His work with patients like Sabina Spielrein, for instance, was entirely psychologically oriented and groundbreaking for its time, precisely because of this psychological focus. No physical manipulation involved. Okay, good to clear that up. Let's zoom out to his early life and influences for a moment. He lived to a remarkable age.
Yes, Carl Gustav Jung lived to be 85 years old. Born July 26, 1875, died June 6, 1961. A long and incredibly productive life.
And his childhood was quite unique, influencing his path significantly. As the son of Paul Achilles Jung, a Reformed pastor, he was initially expected to follow in his father's footsteps, right? Study theology.
That was the expectation, yes. But these intense childhood visions profoundly steered him away from that path.
What kind of visions are we talking about here that could shift a young man's entire life trajectory away from the family tradition?
There were two particularly influential ones he recounts. Around age 12, he had this deeply unsettling Basel Cathedral vision, where he imagined God high above the cathedral dropping a giant feces, shattering the roof.
Whoa. That's graphic.
Extremely graphic and deeply disturbing for a pastor's son. An earlier dream involved an underground, almost shotic, phallic God figure. These experiences presented him with a complex, often contradictory, non-dogmatic view of the divine that clashed dramatically with his father's traditional and sometimes struggling faith.
His father struggled with his faith.
Jung perceived his father as struggling intellectually and spiritually within the confines of dogma, which deeply affected Jung. He felt this profound inner conflict between his personal spiritual experiences and the rigid doctrines of the church his father represented.
So that led him away from theology.
Directly. It led him to study medicine at the University of Basel in 1895. Driven by a desire to scientifically explore the human psyche without being bound by religious doctrines he found inadequate. This pivotal choice laid the entire foundation for his analytical psychology, a direct result of these early, powerful inner experiences demanding a different kind of understanding.
And he had one younger sister, correct? Not a large family of origin.
Yes, Jung had only one younger sister, Johanna Gertrude, whom he called Trudy. Born about 9 years after him, she apparently led a relatively private life and didn't pursue a public or academic career like her famous brother.
What about his financial background growing up? Was he from a wealthy family? Medicine was expensive.
Not wealthy, no. Jung came from modest, though certainly not extremely impoverished circumstances. His pastor father earned a low but stable income. The family was educated, part of the Swiss intelligentsia in a way, but financially constrained.
So how did he afford university?
Jung largely financed his medical studies through scholarships awarded to gifted students. He was clearly brilliant early on. He also received some minor family support, potentially from his mother's more affluent and academic Pricework family after his father's early death, and he supplemented his income with part-time jobs and by maintaining a pretty frugal lifestyle.
Resourceful.
And his choice of medicine, besides his intellectual drive, was also quite practical. It offered a clearer path to financial security in the long run compared to theology, which was a real consideration for someone from his background.
How would you describe Jung's personality then, based on his writings and accounts? Was he the life of the party or more of a quiet, introspective observer?
Definitely more the latter. Jung identified predominantly as an introverted person, a concept he himself famously defined and explored in his psychological typology.
Right, introvert-extrovert.
Exactly. His childhood was solitary and deeply introspective, filled with these vivid inner visions rather than lots of external playmates. While he was certainly capable of selective sociability in professional and intellectual circles, his intense relationship with Freud, his collaboration with Wolfgang Pauli, his involvement with the Psychological Club Zurich, and within his family.
He wasn't a total recluse.
Not at all. But he profoundly valued and actively sought retreat and solitude. his self-built stone tower at Bollingen on Lake Zurich.
The famous tower.
Yes. A rustic retreat without modern amenities like electricity or running water, at least initially. It famously embodies his preference for isolation as a necessary condition for deep psychological and spiritual work. It was his personal sanctuary, his place to connect with the earth and his own depths.
And how did he spend his final years, say, from 1955 after Emma died, until his own death in 1961? Was he still working?
His final years were this blend of continued intellectual productivity and profound personal losses. He kept working, yes. He continued writing major works like Mysterium Connuncionis, his magnum opus on alchemy.
A huge work.
Immense. And he contributed extensively to memories, dreams, reflections with his secretary, Aniela Jaffe. He even gave significant interviews, like that famous 1959 BBC face-to-face interview, demonstrating his ongoing intellectual engagement and willingness to communicate his ideas.
But also dealing with loss.
Yes. These years were also marked by the loss of his wife, Emma, in 1955, and Tony Wolff had died a couple of years earlier in 1953. These significant losses undoubtedly deepened his already introspective nature and intensified his focus on spiritual questions, the meaning of life, death, and the psyche.
So how was his health? How did he die?
Despite increasing physical frailty and previous heart problems, he'd had a significant heart attack in 1944, which was accompanied by intense visions.
Another period of visions.
Yes. He continued to live in his Küsnacht home, supported by his 5 adult children, a dedicated housekeeper named Ruth Bailey, and close collaborators like Aniela Jaffe. He didn't die suddenly. It was more a period of gradual decline due to heart circulatory problems and general old age weakness. He passed away peacefully at home on June 6, 1961. He's buried in Küsnacht at the cemetery of the Reformed Church near his wife, Emma.
So for us, what does this all mean? Bringing the personal and the professional together. Jung's personal life, with its complexities, its contradictions, its intense struggles, and its deeply spiritual quest, was just inextricably linked to his theories.
You can't separate them.
Right. Understanding the man helps us understand the profound relevance of his ideas for navigating our own complex inner world. And it really shows how personal struggle, when confronted honestly, can become universal insight.
Beautifully put. The personal became the foundation for the universal in his work.
So we've traced Jung's journey from his break with Freud through his personal crisis, the creation of the Red Book, and the development of his unique therapeutic approach, grounded in his own experience. Now, let's talk about his enduring legacy. How exactly do his ideas influence modern psychiatry and psychotherapy today? Are they just historical footnotes, or are they actively used?
That's a crucial distinction to make. It's important to acknowledge upfront that Jung's analytical psychology is not central to mainstream biologically focused psychiatry.
Okay, so not the standard approach you'd get everywhere.
Not the standard, no. That field tends to emphasize pharmacology medication and evidence-based therapies with clear protocols, like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Jung's approach is much more complex, individualized, and harder to fit into neat empirical boxes.
And then it hasn't vanished.
Not at all. His concepts have significantly permeated psychodynamic therapies, depth psychological approaches, and many integrative therapeutic models. Many psychiatrists and psychologists, in fact, receive training in these Jungian-influenced areas as part of their psychotherapeutic qualifications. They integrate Jungian thought into a broader framework.
So specific concepts are still being actively used in practice. Can you give us some examples of what's truly relevant today in the therapy room?
Absolutely. The core concept of individuation, for example, is still widely used, even if not always explicitly named. This is the process of guiding patients towards self-realization, towards integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of their personality for greater wholeness.
Becoming who you truly are.
Exactly. It's Jung's most profound answer to the question, how do I become my authentic self? It's a lifelong process of integrating every part of you, even the uncomfortable bits, the shadow for genuine wholeness. This concept is vital for anyone navigating identity issues, midlife crises, existential questions, or even personality disorders.
Okay, what else?
Then there are archetypes and the collective unconscious. These are used to interpret universal patterns that appear in dreams, in personal narratives, even in cultural phenomena like myths or movies.
How would a therapist use that?
For instance, recognizing a hero archetype emerging in a patient's dream could be used to foster empowerment or resilience. Or understanding a trickster pattern might help make sense of self-sabotaging behaviors. It helps connect personal struggles to universal human experiences, giving them a broader context and sometimes lessening shame or isolation. It can be particularly useful in processing trauma or deep emotional conflicts.
And his active imagination technique, born from his own crisis. Is that still used?
Yes, active imagination is employed, especially in psychodynamic therapies and creative arts therapies. It helps patients consciously interact with inner images, maybe by drawing their dreams, sculpting figures that appear, or dialoguing on paper the figures from their imagination or visions.
A way to make the unconscious tangible.
Precisely. It helps to process conflicts, particularly when words fail. This can be especially beneficial for conditions like PTSD or depression, providing a nonverbal outlet for difficult emotions and allowing for symbolic resolution and integration. And of course, dream analysis, while interpreted differently than Freud, remains a core component of many psychodynamic therapies, used to explore unconscious conflicts, compensatory messages, and patterns relevant to neuroses, anxiety, and existential crises. Jung saw dreams as offering unique, personalized insights into the patient's inner world and path toward wholeness.
And what about his psychological types, like introversion and extroversion? Those seem everywhere.
They really are. His framework of psychological types, including introversion, extroversion, and the four functions thinking, feeling, intuition, sensation, forms the basis for widely used tools like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI.
Oh, yes, the MBTI.
Now, the MBTI itself has its critics regarding its psychometric validity, but the underlying Jungian principles are incredibly useful. They help therapists understand a patient's personality structure, their communication style, their preferred ways of engaging with the world. This allows for more tailored therapeutic approaches and fosters self-understanding for the client, recognizing their strengths and potential blind spots.
And lastly, synchronicity. Does that have a place in therapy?
Synchronicity is perhaps the most controversial in a scientific sense.
Meaningful coincidence.
Exactly. While less scientifically validated in a rigorous empirical way, the concept of meaningful coincidences can be a valuable tool, therapeutically speaking, for patients facing spiritual or existential crises. It can help them find meaning, connection, and a sense of underlying order in seemingly random events, offering a sense of purpose when they feel lost or adrift. It speaks to the human need for meaning.
It sounds like these applications are found more in specific niches, specialized training, rather than across the board in all psychology departments.
Precisely. These applications are typically found in specialized psychotherapeutic training institutes, like the various C.G. Jung institutes around the world, or as modules within clinical and personality psychology courses at universities, often globally. But they aren't usually standalone academic subjects in the way behavioral psychology might be. This reflects the broader academic emphasis on empirical science and standardized, evidence-based approaches. Jung's more profound, speculative, and deeply symbolic ideas often find a more welcoming home in specific psychodynamic, depth-oriented, and transpersonal trainings.
So for us, this brings us to a really interesting point. Jung's current cultural popularity. It feels like he's experiencing a massive renaissance, almost surpassing Freud in popular appeal these days. Is he truly in today?
Yes, he is, undeniably. Jung's teachings are currently experiencing a significant renaissance in mainstream culture, often surpassing Freud in popular interest and discussion.
Why do you think that is?
Well, concepts like Schattenarbeit, shadowwork, animanimus, and archetypes are widely discussed on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and in numerous podcasts. Figures like Jordan B. Peterson have heavily drawn on Jungian ideas, making them accessible, perhaps sometimes simplified, to a huge new generation eager for self-understanding and personal growth.
Right. Shadow work is everywhere online.
Exactly. And his introversion-extroversion framework, heavily popularized, as we said, by the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, is just enormous in the worlds of business coaching, career counseling, and general self-help worldwide. Plus, his emphasis on spirituality, on synchronicity, on finding personal meaning resonates deeply with people seeking non-dogmatic spiritual guidance in an increasingly secularized, sometimes fragmented and disorienting modern world. Freud feels perhaps more historically bound to a certain era for many.
Has this always been the case, this level of popularity, or is this a more recent phenomenon?
His popularity has had a fascinating historical trajectory. In his early career, pre-1913, he was really overshadowed by Freud, with limited popular recognition outside psychoanalytic circles.
Okay.
In his mid-career, say from the 1920s to the 1950s, he gained recognition, especially in intellectual, artistic, and some esoteric circles, but he also faced considerable academic skepticism and controversy, especially around the Nazi era.
Right, that complicated period.
After his death in 1961, his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, published in 1962, significantly increased his influence and public profile. His ideas were then embraced quite strongly by the counterculture and the New Age movement in the 60s and 70s, and the MBTI further popularized his typology concepts. However, he remained somewhat marginal in mainstream academic psychology during much of that time.
So the current renaissance is really post-2000s. What kicked it off?
Exactly. This current renaissance, particularly from the 2000s to the present, has been significantly fueled, I believe, by the 2009 publication of the Red Book.
Making the hidden source public.
Precisely. This made his deeply personal yet universally resonant inner journey accessible to the public for the first time. It landed at a moment when it directly addressed modern spiritual and existential needs for meaning and depth. Combine that with the rapid spread of his ideas via social media and online influencers, coupled perhaps with the perceived outdatedness or discomfort with some Freudian concepts for contemporary audiences, it all propelled Jung into the popular spotlight.
So multiple factors converging.
Yeah, the accessibility of the Red Book, a growing societal search for meaning and non-traditional spirituality, the widespread use of Jung-derived concepts like the shadow in pop psychology and self-help, and a broader interdisciplinary appeal of his work connecting psychology with mythology, religion, art, even physics. It all contributes to his current surge in popularity.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Jung's ideas aren't just for therapists or academics locked away in institutes. They've woven themselves into the very fabric of modern self-understanding.
They really have.
They offer this rich, accessible framework for exploring your own psychology, your relationships, your dreams, and your place in the wider human story. His work provides these profound aha moments that can genuinely reframe how you see your inner world and your connection to something larger.
A toolkit for the soul, in a way. #tag outro.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating, complex, and yes, sometimes unsettling world of C.G. Jung.
It's quite a journey to cover.
It really is. We've journeyed through his dramatic break from Freud, that foundational schism that forced him into a profound creative illness. A harrowing, yet transformative period documented in the secret pages of the Red Book.
Yeah, that descent into the unconscious.
We've seen how these intensely personal struggles became the universal theories that still resonate so strongly today, shaping not only therapeutic approaches for individuals ranging from artists like Hermann Hesse to scientists like Wolfgang Pauli, but also influencing self-help, popular culture, and offering us these new lenses through which to view ourselves and our place in the world.
Jung dared to descend into his own abyss, his own underworld, really, to find the bedrock of the human soul. He emerged with this profound understanding that our inner world holds immense power for both destruction and creation, and that true wholeness, individuation, comes from integrating all its parts, light and shadow.
Exactly. So we encourage you to reflect on the concepts we've discussed today. Perhaps ask yourself, what unexplored depths lie within your own psyche, waiting to be acknowledged, maybe even befriended, and integrated into your complete self?
A good question to ponder.
Maybe you'll start to notice threads of Jungian thought woven into your own life, your dreams, the stories you're drawn to, or the cultural experiences around you. The journey to self-understanding is ongoing, and Jung provides an extraordinary, if challenging, map to guide us.
He certainly offers no easy answers, but perhaps the right questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.